Welcome to User Insights, a podcast series powered by UXarmy.
Hi, good morning, Matt. This is Kuldeep. I am the co-founder of UXarmy, and very welcome to the podcast User Insights. We have done about 5 or 6 sessions of this podcast, and I'm so glad to have you here. I will just quickly introduce you in one sentence, and then leave it to you to introduce yourself. I was especially intrigued that you are a UX researcher with a background in human factors, and one thing that resonates very well with me is your interest.
Oh yeah,
don't blame the user. When you go to all these airplane crashes, I think the investigation comes has to be pilot error, and hardly is talked about the design flaws that exist in all these accidents, be it the Taiwan crash or be it any other crash. So yeah, I mean, I'm of the view as well that we should design better systems and better products, and don't blame the user for such mission critical situations or mission critical systems. So with that, I think I would like you to introduce yourself instead of me trying to introduce you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks, Kuldeep. Good to see you again. Thanks for inviting me as well. Thanks for mentioning my little "Don't blame the user" motto as well. I think I picked that up in one of the first classes of university. One of the lecturers said it, and it just kept coming back to me with different things. Yeah, in the pilot example is you have to think about, why do we have pilots, right? It's because the airplanes are ridiculously complicated things, so complicated that you need a person at the helm who has been trained to use it. And it's kind of like, well, if you just put everything down to pilot error, then do you get anywhere? No. So where's the easiest place to where's the easiest place to try and get ahead of those things? Well, it's the people sitting in an office, isn't it? Rather than the person on the flight. So let's blame the people in the office, not the people in the moment. If we're going to pass blame at all, which we shouldn't be doing anyway. Sorry, me. Hey, I'm Matt. I'm a senior UX researcher at PropertyGuru, but I think maybe I'll talk about some of my past experience as well in case it comes up later. I have a degree in human factors and ergonomics. It's the one that a lot of people in the UK will recognize from Loughborough University. So I'm up to like 9, nearly 10 years of experience in kind of user-centric design world. First, I started off in furniture, actually, which, when you look at it as like a package of ergonomics, is very, very relevant, right? That's where I picked up the early skills that I adopted in user research. Was doing a lot of testing of different products and furniture pieces with people of the local area. Then I moved on to Jaguar Land Rover, of course, the automotive company, which was moving into like an in-house role, which was very exciting and more of like has some parallels with what I do now in terms of it was a product organization. And then I moved on to MIMA, which was previously called CCD in London, and they're a human-centered design agency. Does a lot of work in human factors, rail, and wayfinding, and customer experience design. And then I moved over to Singapore and managed to get in with PropertyGuru. I've been applying my emphasis on human centrism to the research world here, and very much enjoying it. Hopefully I'm making an impact on a lot of the people there, and I'm learning a lot from them as well.
I'm sure. I think PropertyGuru gets better and better by the day, so I'm sure there's some good work happening. Talking of ergonomics, I mean, I have not been able to find the chair for myself yet, so still there is work to be done, and I think the chair design is one of the most classic use application of human factors, which is pretty prevalent across everywhere. From there, maybe we should just switch gears and get to the point of today's discussion, which is how can we as UX researchers can make the most of market research, insights that we get from our own UX research about products, and not to forget the data that comes from product analytics or even live analytics and experiments like A/B testing and so on. That's the topic for today. I would love to discuss on that. Let's start with the first question from our side. Like, what do you think are the biggest challenges the companies are facing when they are trying to combine the insights from various sources of these insights, right from market research to the ones that we find out as UX researchers, and also then those coming from the analytics and data, live analytics.
I think the biggest challenge with grouping those three things together is de-siloing the different groups that produce them. And kind of also in an organizational perspective, thinking about the map of skills that are required to work on all of those things across different teams, whether those things can be achieved by the same team or whether there are multiple teams working on separate parts of those. Market research might sit partly with a user researcher, it might sit with a market researcher, it might sit with the strategy team. Product analytics might sit with data, might sit with engineering, might sit with user research again, might sit with product. So who has what skills, and also who feels ownership of what? I think today there's a lot of people that can get quite protective of their territory, in the little bit of work that they do for the business, right? So when you get territorial like that, that's when you build silos. And when you build silos, you're not able to bring complementary pieces of information together in a way that would benefit the overall business and the work that some people are doing. So I think, that's the biggest challenge. Is basically every business has a different format of who does what and for who and why. So you kind of need to look at your business, understand where your business fits in the ecosystem that it works in, and use that to derive ideally derive the organizational structure. But of course, you usually start off with an organizational structure that you've joined into, and try to mold it into one where teams who do complementary things talk to each other and know each other, and they know that they benefit from collaborating, and they know that they fail when they don't collaborate, basically.
Yeah, and to some extent, it's inversely proportional to the size of the organization. If you see the organizations that are lean, typically end up in breaking those silos, and like what you call de-siloing, and same thing if you go to the extreme of it, which is usually the banks. It's pretty hard to break those structures, because not because the people want to be bad, it's just that they are the risk involved is too big. So I believe personally that a lot of this is to do with not just the organization thing, but also the communication skills of UX researchers, and also the organization skills of UX researchers come here into play as well. So there's a lot to deal with. But it's a challenge that exists today, for sure. And would you like to name some data sources that should be combined in your view for a better understanding of?
This should be combined. So often the way I look at it is maybe this is framed by the way that PG is set up and maybe how JLR was set up, but and my experiences in those places. But I kind of see it as you have research that is about the product, which is a lot more towards what I would say that I do. And then you have research that is about the business or the brand. And then you have the research that is about the outer world. So who controls those different things? A lot of people might say market research covers the things that, like a little bit of the product stuff and a little bit of the business stuff. And sometimes there's an example that I'm thinking of in PropertyGuru, which goes out and just looks at the outer world. It looks at like, how do people feel about house prices at the moment? That's the outer world. That's not how do you feel about this website or this product or this feature. It's not even how do you feel about this company versus that company. It's how do you feel about how things are going. But in terms of like the metrics that you were talking about, something like an NPS or a CSAT, that is a product-centered piece of research. Whereas like something like how much do you trust this business? That's more of a brand thing. Have I covered the question there? And more.
Yes, yeah, I think quite well. And I was listening very carefully, and for me, it's like these metrics that you talk about. I mean, there are discussions about these; they're all debatable. But yes, these are the general measures that are used.
I know what you mean. Like the NPS and CSAT.
Yeah, both they are like debatable, but at the same time, because. But that's for another day. Let's talk about how do you use market insights or market research that has been done in your organization, whether here or any other organization that you've worked with. Like, how do you marry this and the insights that you're going to generate for product development?
How do you marry market research with user insights? Okay, so
yeah,
when I hear that, I'm kind of thinking about. Well, actually, first of all, stepping back, what are user insights? User insights insight is a piece of information that's helpful, that helps a decision be made. Yeah. So therefore, a user insight is a piece of information about people that helps a decision be made. So if your NPS goes down, that's potentially a user insight. If your click-through rate as a product metric instead of a market research metric perhaps goes down, then that's potentially a user insight. But also, if one of them goes up while the other one goes down, that's another potential user insight. But then the other angle of potential user insight is maybe I spoke to somebody, maybe I did an interview with one of our users, and they said, I have a specific problem with this piece of the interface, or the filters aren't working, or I perceive them to not work when actually they do. It's just to do with the terminology, the semantics we've used. We've used the radio instead of a checkbox, or that kind of detail. So I'm kind of getting at the difference between qualitative and quantitative. So in terms of marrying the user research and the market research, it often boils down to understanding what it is you're trying to do, and what ratio of that qualitative and quantitative that you need in order to answer that question. So are you trying to decide which of these two designs we should go with? You need to figure out, can we make that decision based on a few thousand people using both of them, and these people did something slightly different to these people, so we'll go with this one. Or is it nuanced? Actually, in a more nuanced situation, you probably want to show it to somebody, multiple people, at least 5, and then watch them, see where they stutter, see where they run into problems, see what they say, see how they feel about it. And usually that level of deep insight would push you probably a little bit further than the kind of shallow, maybe it's a too harsh word to use, shallow insight that maybe like a quick check with many people would push you. Maybe you need to do both, in which case you might call that something like a mixed methods research. So it often does come down to somebody who is an expert, good enough in the methodologies to be able to recommend what methodologies need to be used, and also what data we're currently gathering that can be pulled in. So if somebody comes to me with a question about things, the first thing I always do is, do we already know the answer? The next thing, well, actually, maybe it's before, is this the right question? And what's the context of the question? As well as having empathy for the users, I need to have empathy for the person asking the question of me. What is their situation in the organization? Why are they asking this question? What is their motive? I think I've gone round about the question there.
Well, no, but I think it's the summary of it is clear. I'm sure it's going to be helpful. At the same time, I mean, when we are on that topic, I'm just wondering, like, when you use the product analytics or product usage data, what kind of metrics are you looking at in a UX researcher role?
Yeah, again, a typical answer of a UX person is it depends. It very much depends on your business. What are the key metrics for you? I was talking to some colleagues about this recently, actually. A lot of businesses are built off of leads being like the be-all, end-all, right? So you might have impressions, then you might have clicks, views, sessions, number of users, number of unique users, number of logged in users, all of those things per month, per week, per year, per hour. Or you might have clicks per user, clicks per session. All of those things are your kind of interaction funnel, where it'll be like you start off with the widest piece of the funnel is like it's gone out there, X many people have seen it, and then X minus 80% people have clicked it, and then X minus whatever that is, minus 80% again have clicked onto the next thing, started to sign up and all that kind of thing. Different parts of an organization would be interested in different things. Like talking about PG, we're interested in like how many people are doing searches, where we're coming up on Google results, of course. But then also, do they generate a lead for an agent? Do they inquire? But sometimes businesses don't have visibility of the data that they truly want. They need to understand that a lot of these metrics are proxies for what they're really trying to achieve. So what is your business? Maybe you could look at your mission statement or your vision statement about like what your business tries to do. In the example of like Jaguar Land Rover, what are they trying to do? Are they just out to sell cars, or are they out to, create a positive community around automotive experiences? Are they out to propel the world towards electrical transport? What are the different things they're focusing on? And what is the final metric that describes that? And can it be described in one final metric? So, for example, the example we talked about with my colleagues the other day was like dating apps, Hinge or Tinder or Bumble. I think Hinge kind of caught onto this with one of their marketing campaigns was, we want you to delete us, something like that. We hope that you delete the app. You delete the app, that means you are, I assume, in a successful relationship. So that's their end game. We're trying to get people to successful relationships. A more narrow-minded or short-sighted dating app organization might say, our end game is first dates. Or maybe less than that, our end game is a first message. So then you start to think about like, if the business, the business is just an app, it's just the thing that gets you to the first date, first message. But should it be just an app? Should it do other things that, flourish relationships as an example now?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of tries to, it is kind of driving towards the, what they call as North Star metric in the startup world or a new business. Especially the startup world is quite familiar with this concept of North Star metric. I'm not sure how much it's followed in the organizations or mature organizations, but definitely there is, I can imagine that larger organizations may have a little more, let's say, vagueness around which metric is more important than the other. and maybe there are ongoing debates upon which metrics is now the most important. But that aside, I think let's move on to
It's
the
hard
next
to
topic in
pivot
view of
in a
time.
large organization as well. When you've got
Yeah.
people or entire teams that for many years have been dedicated to a specific metric or a series of specific metrics, and then you have a big group get together and you realize, oh, actually, we should be focusing on this. It's a lot harder to bring people around to those new ideas.
And in your work in the past, doesn't matter which organization, have you got the chance to leverage on testing?
So I am often involved in the early part of A/B testing. Does it need to be done? What are the hypotheses we're testing here? And what is the A and the B? What is the split? What's the control? All this kind of stuff. And also the output. But the actual nitty gritty of setting it up on the page, that so far hasn't sat with me. Yeah.
And just curiosity, like how do you actually use the outcome that is there from A/B testing in the UX research role? Do you have any example to share with us?
Yeah. So we would often be looking at it like so. A typical process would be there's a page somewhere that is very old, or we're seeing something to do with it that makes us think that it needs changing. So we'll dedicate some design resource to look at it. Ideally, we would dedicate some qualitative research time to investigate. Are there things wrong with it? What works with it at the moment? What needs to be updated for the modern time if it was a particularly old page or something? Then that would feed the design, hopefully. Then the design would come up with something. But then when you end up with an A/B test is usually when that process has gone through a situation where you're actually not sure, is this output right or is this output right? Even though hopefully through that process we've learned from users and we've discovered things, we might still not be sure. One of the things we talk about a lot is research is about reducing guesswork, but there's still guesswork. It's about reducing uncertainty, but you can never be fully certain. So even if you've done that research, you might still end up with a situation where you're like, okay, I've got two things here, I want to figure them out. So then you'd probably launch an A/B test that has a control, which is as it is today, and then the A and the B, which are the two designs you've come up with. So you would then launch that for however long, have certain percentages of people who land there see different versions of it, and then you track how long did they stay, did they do the next anticipated outcome, did they send a message, did they save this thing, did they report it, like that. And then you can just look at those things, and of course you need to figure out statistical significance with the control and everything and the number of users that you had. And you could say, well, this one was 5%, performed 5% better. And maybe it goes along with the theme of, transparency or guidance or something that we came up with from the qualitative. So we're like, okay, it makes sense with what we looked at before. It's quite rare that something would come up in A/B testing that directly conflicts with any previous research. Yeah.
I mean, in my experience, it is the A/B testing has been very effective with people who are like $1 million is at stake when there is a lot of live audience, and they want to really, do a small change, as small as color of a button or placement of a button. But that's something which is probably user researchers stay not that close to that environment in all cases.
Yeah.
So like you said,
I would say
the former part.
Yeah. We could talk forever about the difference between UI and UX, but if it's rounding of a button or the color of a button, I'll probably stay away from it. But if it's, should we display a list or a map or something else as default, that's that's quite core to the experience and the architecture of the user flow. I would be interested in those kind of things.
Okay. Coming to data-driven decision making and company culture, what would your advice be to set up this culture in an organization?
Personally, I benefit from a lot of different forums, the ability for people to share things, showing people that the success of other teams when they've done things a certain way is particularly positive. You also don't want to almost greenwash the success, though. You don't want that the only time that multiple teams get together to be when they're celebrating success, because then you kind of get this situation of, well, does anyone ever do anything wrong? Because I did something wrong last week and I feel that I can't share in this forum now. So as well as the sharing success forums, you need the forums that aren't necessarily about, sharing failures, but share the story of how you reached that success, even if it took a long time. And also maybe smaller forums for getting advice from each other, which may happen within departments. It might happen within the design team, might happen within a marketing team. There might be like a little design marketing alliance that happens once a month, sorry. Once a week might be too much. Where you kind of go, hey, we're halfway through this project. Do you guys want to let us know how it's going? So I think when you open up those communication channels for people to give positive, constructive feedback to each other, that's when you are really enhancing a culture. The other area of culture is, of course, in leadership. So as a user researcher, you actually need to use those rapport building skills that you have in interviews with your colleagues themselves. I was actually listening to another podcast recently where one of the speakers was talking about how UX researchers are often not the most popular people in their product team, because we might come back and say, this design isn't working, there's something wrong with it, or the way that the thing is going is not right, we need to change, we need to do this total shift. And that can, if delivered incorrectly, can be hurtful to people. So you need to be very empathetic of the people you work with, and also with the leadership. So you want your leadership to be using your insights in front of others. You want your leadership to be talking about how proud they are of the success of this team because they used your insights, or because they blended your insights with this research from over here and these analytics from over here. Or they're talking about like a forward strategy for the next 6 months or the next year. This isn't something that they can talk about how proud they are of people so far. This is them saying, oh, it's good so far, and now I want to do this. Together we're going to do it by this and that. So sometimes it can be really good when like user research has a bit of like a quick step up to like leadership, and you can implant those little bits of empathy building stuff, like even share the name of somebody that you interviewed last week and the specific problem they had and why it affected them in particular, and just humanizing it a little bit.
It boils down to storytelling, I think, skills. And I think it's absolutely, let's say, killer skill that user researchers must develop if they don't have it yet. I think it's all about how you convey a story, and how you, like the point that you mentioned about empathy. How do you develop, get that empathy? Because then the understanding becomes, and absorbing becomes way more easier as compared to you telling the hard facts, or
because people don't remember the stats. It's very rare that you would do a presentation, even if you've got like on every slide it says 52%. That's the main thing I want you to remember. In a month, no one will remember that. But they might remember the story of Julian and his son and how they couldn't find this product and they really needed it by Wednesday. And because they didn't get it, it meant all these other things happened. And that actually is an example of the user story. But you can also do your own team's story of like, oh, we were tracking this metric and it was going fine, so we thought it was all right. But then we noticed this other one was dipping, the one that was about it was a subjective quantitative rather than an objective quantitative. It was about NPS or CSAT. That dropped, but the main objective metric didn't. So we were really confused. So we looked into this more, and then we discovered this and that. Then, we thought that was interesting. So we did a concept design of this and then showed it to these people. And then we learned this and that, and then we did that, and then the metric went back up. There you go. That's a story as well. It's not a user story. It's a team.
Yeah. But that one doesn't stick for long.
Not as much, but it also shows other people the process, which is important because if you just went to them and you said, we made a new design and it made us 50% more successful, that's even less memorable. And it also doesn't encourage other people to share their internal stories.
Yes. I think it's a combination of these two, the people's story and also the process, so that the whole thing becomes more credible and also you have weight attached to it, so it is not up in the air kind of thing. I think the next question is and this is the last question. It's very favorite for me personally, being UXarmy being a technology-based user research company, although we do user research manually as well. We just want to check with you, what do you see as the future of role of technology in this user research field? And what is your what do you like? Do you believe that this can shape the future of user experience research and other optimizations that we do?
So I think AI is like the elephant in the room at the moment in this, and it's one of those things where it's moving so quickly that, like, specifically May 2024 is a very specific period of history to be talking about it. It may be different in September 2024, but probably quite a lot different in May 2030. So it's actually difficult to see. I do have some skepticism about some of the things that are said. There's a lot of different opinions flying around about, like, what will happen. I feel like the synthetic user stuff is a bit scary, and I will try and stay away from that until that's most definitely proven. Like, we're seeing so much just like at the time of recording, I think just recently Google started putting Google AI bit at the top of their search results, and it's telling people to do quite worrying stuff. There's definitely a very, very good place for AI in being an assistant, in being something that can improve an individual's productivity. At the moment, yes, it's definitely an assistant. From what I understand of, like, how the models work, it's kind of like put one word in front of the other rather than a genuine intelligence as we would measure a human by. And to get to that point of a genuine intelligence, I think that probably won't be for the rest of my career, as far as I know, but we'll see. So I think that, like, in terms of user research, definitely it will have an impact on, like, helping come up with the discussion guide. At the moment, it can't do a full discussion guide because it's just not nuanced enough. It asks leading questions, but it can help you with it can inspire you a little bit. It can probably help with recruiting. It can probably, filter a large group of people down into the ones that you want to talk to. You can probably automate, like, giving incentives. At the moment, it can't take over the interview itself. Some people are talking about, like, imagine a user comes into an interview and the whole interview is done by an AI. I'm like, imagine being that user. That'd be awesome. And people would figure out, at the moment, how it is. People would figure out ways of, like, cheating it, especially if you're doing the screener fully through AI. There are ways of talking around it.
Yeah.
You could probably, I don't know. Then in the analysis, I think, again, that is an area where, that's a very time-consuming part of the job. A lot of people would like AI to help with. The problem is, at the moment, AI is still hallucinating information. So you can kind of use it to maybe guide your early thoughts, but also, you've got to test it out first. Maybe let it analyze one of your projects, and then you don't look at it until you've done your analysis, and then you compare the two. If they align, maybe think about using it the next time. But if they don't, then just steer clear. So I think there's definitely augmentation to come. Outside of AI, I see like user research having more sway in product decisions. And I even see like user researchers and PMs maybe thinking about crossing over those roles, like having career switches or maybe some sort of hybrid in the future. A lot of people talk about democratizing research, which some people will get scared by, some people embrace. I think it's fine to embrace a topic like that. But I would also say that in a organization that has democratized research, you would still need like a research kind of figurehead, someone who knows all the intricacies and everything. So I definitely don't see there being like a downfall of the UX researcher. I actually see it going up because there's also lots of conversation around like, well, there could be a perfectly successful product organization that has more researchers than designers. And all of that at the moment can be augmented by AI, but I don't think.
Yeah, I think these are the two hot terms going around, like you said, AI, which everybody is uncertain about, and frankly, there are two views of two viewpoints, and one point of view is that the AI will replace everything in the next 2 years because the growth will be exponential. And then there is another camp that believes that it's already deflated. The whole AI thing is deflated because it hasn't shown anything promising, especially when it comes to interpreting humans and how they behave, how they think, and so on. It's so much so that there is no software, to my knowledge, available yet, which can actually figure out, looking at a video from a usability testing, like where exactly what was said and summarize it in an effective way. Although we keep getting requests as a platform company towards, can you generate summaries? Because that's what it does for a lot of meetings. But hey, in a meeting, usually there is no interaction happening on a third plane, which is like nobody is writing on the board and then discussing about that point. And that's where the AI kind of loses its hand from the shore, and then it just starts sailing directionlessly. And I think that's very hard part to explain as well, because the vibe is that AI can do a lot of things, and like you say, a complex part of and a time-consuming, effort-intensive part is once you have to do the analysis. And I think that's where either we don't know the right prompting, or the AI is inadequate at this point. And the other topic we just talked about is democratization. It has its own plus and minus. I think it's not a solution. It's more like how to get other people on board. But I mean, in general, if you look at all these technologies trying to take up the role, part of the role from a researcher's life or researcher's work desk, I'm not sure. Like, have you found anything promising yet, which actually says that this is the direction all this is?
The best thing I've seen so far is actually more to do with disseminating the findings across the team rather than figuring out what to research, doing the research, analyzing the research, or writing up the research. I like to summarize all of the interviews that I do in quite detailed notes. I usually put my own summary in there, but when stakeholders absorb research, they often only want to give it 30 seconds. So if sometimes I do an interview that's so juicy with insights that you can't summarize it in 30 seconds, but so we put all of ours on Confluence and Atlassian have this like summarize page feature, which can be a little like give you some kind of non-information, but I think for like a high level senior who just wants the gist to be able to say summarize this, that's quite powerful, and I can see that getting better. But yeah, I think like going back to one of the things you mentioned just a minute ago, actually just wanted to raise this point, is that everyone's talking about prompt engineering, and it's like a whole field. And the existence of the field tells you that the AI is not intelligent in the way that we measure humans. You don't need to think about prompt engineering when you're talking about how do I tell my junior UX designer what to do. Like, you don't need to say, oh, I need to say this specific word and this thing, because you have a human conversation with them and they can figure it out from like the little, I suppose there is a little bit of prompt engineering when you're talking about like effective management, but not to the extent that everyone's doing prompt engineering at the moment. I find that to be a funny part of the AI world at the moment.
Yeah. In fact, personally, I find it quite a waste of time, because the whole technology is moving that fast that the prompt engineering that you learn become obsolete with the next model, perhaps, or the next big stage. So what are you learning? I mean, you probably are learning how to type, how to stay ahead of every model that comes out there, and how would most likely it perform when you type a certain prompt. So it's more like a very dynamic role, which is supposed to keep track of all the advancements that happen, and that's probably a very challenging thing to do. But anyhow, we can all guess sitting here about a lot of things, and there's a lot happening. But anyways, I am definitely gonna generate a summary of the transcript of this session and pass it on to you,
AI?
and just to check it out. How?
Oh, nice.
So yeah, with AI, and I'm gonna see how it's gonna work. At UXarmy, just to update you, we have also in our lab, AI is always cooking. It doesn't go out as of now, but then the idea is also to see how we can generate a test, a usability test out of few prompts, user-driven prompts. So that kind of takes away a lot of work from, and also the differences that come between one person writing a task and another person writing the same task kind of takes away a couple of variations, or bias that can come because of that. So we are experimenting with this kind of things internally, but as of now, we have not released any feature on our platform or AI, because we still feel the product and the things that we have are not yet ready to go out and meet people like you. So the challenge is big, and the future is unknown and uncertain. Exciting times to be in. With that, I think I would like to conclude and ask if you have any last remarks to make in this podcast.
I think maybe I would just say, like, if anyone's listening who's like early in UX or interested in UX, I'd probably talk about like, I personally wouldn't deter people early in UX from going into it. Because of AI, I think it's more exciting than it is scary, overall, with a kind of positive mindset. But then also the things to think about in terms of shaping yourself for the position are, I think the three main like attributes of a good person in UX, both designer and researcher, would be like curiosity, empathy, and delivery. So always be interested in people who have different views to you. Always be try to be understanding of like the other ways, the situations people might be in, both the kind of customer types that you're thinking about and also in your business. And then delivery is just like you've got to deliver the work at the end of the day. You've got to get the insights in at the right time. You've got to, because if it's late, then it doesn't get into the product, and then you don't want it to be forgotten. And it also needs to be documented properly so that people can come back to it, and so that the AI can read it out and summarize it nicely.
Yeah. And I think the storytelling really fits
Yeah.
well into the empathy part that you mentioned. Because, end of the day, I mean, these are the skills that researchers should have. And I still believe strongly in this role. I think the role is there to stay. Maybe it will reform itself into some other name, if at all, or maybe there is a certain merging happening where the role is sitting. But anyway, I think the future is exciting, to say the least. So thanks a lot, Matt, and wish you a great week ahead and a great day. It's always a little cloudy nowadays, which is not a bad news for Singapore because after such a dry spell, long time. And I look forward to catch up with you sometime again. So see you and
thanks so much.
Have a nice day.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of User Insights. We hope you gained valuable insights from our conversation.